Wildlife Federation's The Hide.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Mark Kakich and Taylor Finger here at Milford Hills, Wisconsin's premier shooting facility, bringing you the podcast from the Wisconsin Wildlife Federation, The Hide. Taylor, today, let's talk about something that has really brought up a new light in the news, and it's urban wildlife and some of the challenges that it presents for both people living in communities as well as municipalities trying to deal with the problem.
Yeah, this has become one of those things that is continually a growing part of the department's presence in managing wildlife, just because as, large cities, people start expanding, that type of thing, you come into contact with these species. And what happened, we're really good at bringing some of these species back to the point where they become a problem at some point in time. So again, for example, Canada geese, whether that's, inside, municipalities, or they're on the beach, or they're on people's lawns, or right now with the spring, we're already starting to hear turkey issues where they're, toms are starting to get aggressive because it's springtime, and they are attacking people coming out of the grocery store in Wauwatosa. And so, yeah, it's something that you have to balance between what we like to see as people. We love animals. It's one of those things. But if we don't want them attacking our cars or attacking our dogs or things along those lines. So, yeah, the department has really put a pretty serious effort in working with federal agencies and then local municipalities to manage any of these issues that we do have.
Working in Milwaukee every day and growing up in Milwaukee, I don't remember seeing red fox run down 894. I don't remember seeing coyotes in Tippecanoe Park. Like you say, Canada geese are everywhere. Turkeys on, 49th and Hopkins crossing the street. I mean, you name it, everything presents an issue. And from the department side, what are some of the things that you're doing to try to, get those situations under control, or at least work with both the people and the communities involved?
Yeah, it really depends along with which species we're talking about. So, I'll give a couple examples. So for Canada geese, again, you try to balance with a resource that hunters want to utilize, but a lot of those times those geese won't leave that area, so they're not able to be hunted. So you have a population that continues to grow and continues to grow. And we have to, because Canada geese are a federally managed species, we have to work with federal agencies in order to do that. So, when we we have a process that we work with USDA Wildlife Services, so that if say Milwaukee has an area that has, 1,000 Canada geese that they like, hey, we don't want them. This is an issue. They're becoming problems with cars. We're concerned about, them attacking people as they're golfing or something along those lines. They reach out to the department. And then the department typically will then forward them to the USDA Wildlife Services, which give them some guidance on how to try to mitigate the issues without having to take any lethal controls on them. So like whether it's scaring them with fake foxes or owls, or you're hazing them with loud noises or streamers, or if you can put maybe some large riprap on your park so they don't just go from the water up to the park itself, because we have created perfect habitat for Canada geese in urban areas because it's mowed right down. They don't have to worry about predators.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So but what happens, if all of that fails, then USDA requires a municipality to hold a public hearing so they can say, hey, we're not coming in here sneakily trying to remove Canada geese. Make this a publicly noticed thing. Let the public come in and comment on it. And if the public ends up supporting it, then USDA will come in and they round up those Canada geese. Typically, then we don't translocate Canada geese. They can fly. So that's one of those things that you don't try to pick them up and move them somewhere else, because then they're either giving them to somebody else as a problem, or they're just going to come right back because, again, it's ideal habitat. And then this is something that, people are like, oh, I can't believe that they're just killing these birds. Like, they don't get landfilled. That's the important thing that we hear, is that with you round up a couple hundred Canada geese, you euthanize them. Either all of those birds will then be donated to food pantry, or they're donated to zoos or big cat rescue or things along those lines. Like I know a couple of facilities, like 80% of their food for their large carnivores are rounded up Canada geese. So that's one of those things that I don't think most folks realize, that these aren't just being killed and wasted. All of them are being resourced somewhere.
Yeah, one of the things that I hear from hunters on a regular basis is, if you kind of break it down into two pieces, you have the, major metropolitan areas, Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay, where you have these Canada geese, in and amongst the general population of the city. But then you have places like Horicon, Beaver Dam, Juneau, the outlying communities just outside the major, metropolitan areas that have a significant goose population. And one of the things that hunters always ask are, how come there are places that round up Canada geese that potentially could allow people to hunt, and that target then comes back to the department. But realistically, it's not a Department of Natural Resources issue. It goes back to the federal side of things.
Correct.
And I think most people don't realize that, where, the DNR doesn't necessarily control that. They only have a little piece of input.
Yeah. We, again, Canada geese are one of those things that their populations are doing really well. So we kind of have a blanket permit. So if you're going to remove Canada geese, okay, we're going to permit it, but you have to go through the public input process required by USDA. And like you said, we've had areas or examples where a local municipality worked with hunters to take care of that issue rather than rounding them up. And that really then puts the onus on the hunters or the public to say, hey, we're willing to work with you as a golf course. You guys are shut down for the year. And if you allow some hunting on that, in those more rural areas, we'll take care of that problem for you. And it's building those relationships with those private groups or those, municipalities to allow that to happen and I don't think sometimes a lot of that effort gets put in. It's easier to be upset about, not being able to shoot those birds rather than putting in the work to say, hey, we're willing to work with you to try to take care of the issue.
I think one of the things that you said was building relationships. And I think that falls on, local conservation clubs, local communities, as well as those facilities who might be able to hold a hunting season. And I think it's a good way for them to create an outreach back to the community and hopefully potentially drum up some members for themselves, because hunters are a unique group, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is, like I said, it's not an issue that's going away. Like I said, it's going to public meetings, talking to folks. It's, I don't necessarily want you to kill all the geese, but I don't ever want to see one again. So how do you balance the social carrying capacity for what these are? We want to manage it as a resource, but, when they start encroaching on people's beaches and on, Labor Day, when they want to be out having fun with the family and they're trying to dodge goose poop all over the beach, quickly becomes a point where you don't like Canada geese anymore.
Right. When we first opened up the Metro goose season, per se, around Milwaukee, Mequon was one of the first communities to embrace the opportunity to help control that goose population. And I remember, laying in a field just literally across the street from Milwaukee County and thinking, this is something I never thought was going to happen, right? And Mequon continues to be, a very good community, with working with, constituent groups, as well as the hunters, as well as people in their community, to try to alleviate these issues.
Absolutely. And yeah, like I said, it's right now, again, going back to turkeys, this is the amount of municipalities contacting the department, trying to figure out what they can do. And it's really it's a issue that we try to balance, because, last year Wauwatosa had, I think, 5 or 6 turkeys that were rounded up because, again, I think they knocked over a woman coming out of the grocery store. They were chasing people. They were jumping and spurring people's cars. And so they ended up calling and having the local municipality contacted USDA. They went through this process. They rounded up. They were only able to get a couple of them. So then there was concern from the community. We had, hundreds of contacts, whether they were phone calls or media, trying to figure out what happened to these birds because they were so visible. And people thought of them as family, which is a weird thing. If you don't live out in the country or you're not part of hunting, this is your ability to interact with wildlife, and you get to see them every day, and they come onto your yard and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But you only see that cool part a little part of the time, and the rest of the time they're causing havoc. And it's just this balancing issue that, people love them, but some of them don't. And those ones that don't, if they hurt somebody, they kill somebody's dog, like a coyote, things along those lines, like now it's a really big problem. So, yeah.
Yeah, where I work in the northwest side of Milwaukee, every year I see big bucks walking down the railroad tracks. I see giant toms sitting gobbling, literally 15 yards away from me. And I go, wow, I just hunted for 10 days and that did not happen. But I think one, it says something about conservation. It says something about where we have come as a hunting community to where we didn't have turkeys before in many places. I mean, Anago, right? Go to Anago, now you see turkeys everywhere, right? Who would have thought we'd have turkeys walking down Capitol Drive, right?
A success story for sure. Yeah. Right. And it's and the really important thing that we as wildlife managers, as hunters, as a conservation community need to do is we need to embrace that and let the people that aren't hunters, because we're in the minority, like 10% of the public actually goes out and hunts. We have to share that story with people that don't, so we can continue to get that support. So again, it's important to be like, yes, we as conservationists, we help bring back this species that you are now so excited to see in downtown Madison, 3 blocks from the Capitol, causing traffic jams. But it's, people, oh my gosh, it's so cool to see. And you got to share that story, because if we want to continue to bring back other things or have this into the future, we need support outside of hunters and our conservation groups, because we can't carry that load forever.
And I think it's important. Again, it goes back to relationships, but let's take this down a little bit different road. Let's work our way through wildlife and habitat. So what are some of the things that people can do to prevent turkeys in their backyard, coyotes in their backyard, right? Because turkeys come to everybody's backyard for usually one reason, right? A very well-stocked bird feeder.
Yep.
Correct? So what are some of the things that people in these type of communities can do to kind of ease or relieve themselves of these issues?
Yeah, so I'm going to put a shameless plug out for the DNR. We have a urban nuisance webpage that literally walks through all of the species that we know, whether we're talking bear, we're talking squirrels, rabbits, foxes, coyotes, everything. And we have exactly what you're looking for, right? Is what are the handful of things that you can do to try to alleviate those birds. And yeah, like I said, the number one thing is don't feed them. Do not habitualize them to people. And I mean, as cool as it is, be like, oh, just throw that out there and get it really close to you, or you have them in your yard all the time. Birds don't need bird feeders, especially during the spring, summer, fall type of situation. Like we probably don't want to necessarily be concentrating all of these birds, whether we're talking chickadees or finches, or we're talking turkeys or Canada geese. Do not feed these birds up. Again, a big one with people feeding ducks and geese at the park bread. It's actually just terrible for them, to the point like there's no real nutrients in bread, and ducks love it, but it'll actually cause them harm. They get angel wing. They'll have issues like that. So number one thing is do not habitualize them. Don't, make them comfortable. So one that we always do here is figure out ways to haze them, whether it's loud noises, you're clapping at them, you have, just something to scare them off. Because if they get comfortable, and once they know that you're not going to do anything, no matter what you do, even afterwards, to try to scare them away, they're just going to ignore you. Like, again, got reports, this family let their dog out, and it was a big black lab, and he'd go right up to the turkeys, and turkeys kind of look at him, and if the dog wasn't really willing to go after them, those turkeys didn't move at all.
Yeah, they're kind of buddies after a while, right?
So yeah, so that's that. is the biggest thing, is just don't habitualize them to people. And then, making sure yards are a little bit more difficult, but when, we talk to municipalities is let vegetation grow up. Because, so for example, I know it might not look great at a park to have a little bit of high veg from the water to the actual park thing, but that will guarantee you that the geese won't go there, because they do not like to have to walk through something to get to water, or get from the water up to the park and have to walk through high vegetation.
So let's work our way down the chain, and just from being close to some folks in the DNR intimately, where you kind of get a little bit better feedback, but raccoons, possums, skunks, badgers, mink, they present a different situation in regards to nuisance.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So again, with all of those species that you just said, number one thing is don't go near them, for the love of God. I mean, raccoons carry so many diseases. Just possums, they carry a lot of diseases. Don't try to handle it yourself. I mean, even, you can live trap and you can do that type of stuff and take care of them. But again, you're putting yourself in a situation that you are then handling a live animal, and it becomes a little bit touchy. But what we do have, and again, another awesome resource that the DNR has, is that we have a list of trappers by county, so that if you say, hey, I have a raccoon problem, or I have a beaver issue, or a muskrat issue, or something, you can reach, and we have a list of people's names and phone numbers that you can say, hey, come on in, I'm opening up my property, take what you want, type of situation. And in most cases, trappers will do it, and because I want to say something that they enjoy, and trying to get access to some of these things is really tough. So if you're willing to open up your private property to allow that to happen, again, most of them will take advantage of that.
Yeah, and in major areas now, like in Milwaukee, you can have chickens, right? I just moved from Oconomowoc, and you couldn't have chickens, which, I don't know, something doesn't seem right there, but it is what it is. But
today's day and age with eggs,
I guess, and with the egg prices right now, chickens are the real deal. But what I found is that in 2 years of living in the country with chickens, mink and weasels, they really like chickens.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, most people don't even think about it. Like, again, you ask an average person, have you ever seen a weasel, or have you ever come across a mink? Most of them like, what? Badger's an excellent example. We have a lot of badgers in the state of Wisconsin, and people are like, I've never seen one. Well, if you're not in the area where, typically are, and most, again, with all three of those species, is they tend to be out at night. So people aren't paying attention at that point in time. They are everywhere. And, better than anybody else the amount of problems that they can cause with, your local chicken flock, or even hobby farmers with ducks or things along those lines, that they can cause a real issue. So whether you have the skill to trap them or handle them yourself, or there's plenty of resources out there to try to bring someone in.
Yeah. And for me, I call in a professional. My wife walks up to the house and says, call them. Okay, I don't need to ask who to call. I call Mike, and Mike, the professional guy, he comes in and he takes care of business. And then he says, hey, call me when you need me again. And I'm going, really? He's like, well, you're going to need me again. And sure enough, we need him again. So, there's a list of things that you can do to prevent those situations. You can predator guard your chicken coops, you can protect. But some of the things that you don't want to do, and I tell everybody, the last thing you want to ever do is you never want to use poison to control your problem.
Absolutely. That's, again, it'll take care of it, but you have just transferred a whole nother suite of problems, whether, you've mice, weasels, all of that. If they die somewhere with poison in them, owl or a hawk or something is going to try to take care of that, and now all of a sudden they've become poisoned. So yeah, it's an effective way to do something, but when you think of all of the downhill effects of doing that, it's not a good way to do it. One of the things I did want to touch base, because we hear this again all the time, are bats. Like, we have nuisance issues with bats. And if people haven't tracked this, bats in North America are not doing well. Like, there is a fungus that has now been came from Europe. It's white nose syndrome, and it basically gets into caves where these bats hibernate, and it'll kill them. And like in some cases, some of these populations have declined by 90-95%. So if you do have bats and you have issues, call a professional and they'll relocate them. They'll essentially pick them up, get them out of there, and we don't want to kill them. That's the number one thing. Even if you have a bat in your house, do the best thing that you can is try to release that at least alive. Don't go in there with a shovel or a broom and try to take care of the situation yourself, just because, again, bats, they get a bad rap. They're super important to all of the ecosystem, and they aren't doing well. So if we can do anything to help them as a population, it's on us.
One of the most hilarious events for me was trying to catch a bat with 3 kids and my wife and 2 butterfly nets. It went from the basement to the upstairs, and then finally we realized just get it in a room and close the door, right? But boy, if we could have had that on video, it was great. But the other thing with bats is if you're a gardener, and this is something that I kind of found out along the way, where we have a whole bunch of bats in the barn right now. I was just going to go clean up all the bat poop.
Guano.
Yep. And my wife's like, could you get that and keep it? And I'm like, what? And she said, well, yeah, that's fantastic for the plants. So I just decided to Google it and realize that basically that's gold, right?
It's in all kinds of things, whether we're talking, you're talking health products. It's in all kinds of things that people have no idea about.
Well, it's in my garden right now, right? I vacuum it up and then it goes right into the compost pile. So, but, there's an endless list of things that we can do to help conservation, to help our natural resources and wildlife. And I think if you live in the city or any metropolitan area, I think you have a role to play. And I think organizations such as the Wildlife Federation, Wisconsin Waterfowl Association, Green Bay Duck Hunters Association, they have a great program to rescue duck and goose, babies, right? Ducklings and goslings. So I think there's a ton of different groups that will work with you to help solve your problem willingly. Right.
Right. Yeah. Just make those connections. Like I said, build those relationships, because I don't think most people know that these are options out there. That's like, well, I got a problem, I'm going to call the DNR and hope it gets fixed. But again, we as a DNR, we've tried to build those relationships with these other groups and say, okay, yeah, like I said, Green Bay Duck Hunters, the amount of ducklings that they have rescued probably over the last 20 years, we're talking thousands, tens of thousands of birds that they've rescued over the last 2 decades out there. And, there's one guy, Joe, his phone rings off the hook from about early April until June. And he's, trying to scramble and cover about 50, 60 homes or properties, and he's just running ragged, but he loves it. These people that want to help and do these things, this is what they live for. So just take a chance, do a little bit of research and say, okay, well, rather than trying to kill this situation or, just complaining about it, reach out, and somebody's willing to help.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. The shovel, broom, and poison is not the way to get it done.
No,
right?
Agreed.
So what have we missed? What have we missed in regards to our urban wildlife concerns and issues?
I think just, again, highlighting that if a municipality opens up a public comment period, and whichever side you're on, make sure you go. Whether it's just informational, be like, okay, yeah, I guess I didn't know that this was a problem. And don't, again, if you don't go and voice your opinion, you can't really complain about the outcome of what's going to happen, because if the amount of time and effort wasn't taken to say, hey, this is how I stand, this is how I feel, and you didn't do it, well, again, whatever scenario shakes out, it's tough to feel sorry for you because you didn't take that time to do it. So that's the big one, is whenever something gets posted, either, if you feel a certain way about it, go in and express that. If you don't, go and just educate yourself. See exactly what's going to be going on. So then if it does happen again, you can be like, hey, I see we're rounding up Canada geese every single year at this same exact location. Does it make sense to keep doing that? Or is there ways that we can, as a community, change what we're doing at that location and make it less palatable for Canada geese or, for turkeys or something along those lines? Because again, it gets expensive. If you want to round up Canada geese every single year at a location, it's a couple $1,000s a pop to do so. So is that a good use of taxpayer money?
Yeah, it's not free. It's not something that is a service that is just provided. Municipalities and communities need to pay for that service.
Right. So, yep. So again, you are paying for it as a citizen of that area. So it does affect you if those decisions are being made. So just take an opportunity to go in and be part of that. Some municipalities have plans for urban wildlife. Like Milwaukee and Wauwatosa, they have a coyote management plan for their area. So that, again, if you wanted to be part of it, say, this is something that really concerns me. I'm worried about my little dog. I'm worried about certain things. You can be part of the process to help develop those things because, again, it's your money that's going to work to try to manage it.
And is the game warden going to come solve that issue for you?
No, not every time. Again, our wardens urban wildlife is one of those things that it is an everyday, all-day job if we wanted to really be on beck and call for everything. The one thing that, again, the DNR continually tries to do, it says keep wildlife wild. That is the motto that we say. So having those discussions, you see a baby raccoon in downtown Milwaukee, don't pick it up. You're not rescuing it because there's no rehabilitation or rescue area that is going to take every single baby raccoon or every baby rabbit or everything along those lines. In most cases, the mom's close. So don't think you're going to rescue that situation. Just, again, keep wildlife wild. Let the scenario play out. If it then becomes a concern or danger issue, yes, call a warden. And then he can either say, is this something that I can handle or is this something that we need to work with other agencies to make sure that it can be taken care of?
Right. So when you see the fawn by the bird feeder in the backyard and it's crying a little bit, it's probably because it can't get at the good corn in the bird feeder, right?
Right. Yeah. It's not because it's missing mom or mom's nowhere to be found. Yeah. So that's every single year to the point where if you call a DNR employee, that's the tagline in our voicemail is if you have urban issues with wildlife, let them go. Let them be. Don't try to take things into your own hands.
So some of our next topics that we're going to cover in additional episodes, we'll get a gunsmith in here. We're going to talk about differences between inertia shotguns and gas-operated shotguns and the constant problems that we see. If I had a nickel for every time I took somebody out hunting and they pulled the trigger and the gun went click, and they said the best tool they use is WD-40, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, yeah, keep clicking. Right. So we're going to talk about some of those issues. We're going to stop out at Joe Clayfish's house and we're going to make a turkey pot pie later today. So I think that is something that I truly look forward to because, man, they are delicious.
Absolutely.
Well, we have a long list. So hopefully in the near future, we're going to be right back at you with some great topics and discussion coming up. Also, hopefully we'll have some in-person podcast where we can get some of the public to join us here at Milford Hills and hear from you in person.
Yeah, we have a lot of things coming up in terms of asking for public input. Again, setting the waterfowl seasons for the next 3 years. That's right around the corner, and turkey hunting season's coming up. So again, so folks know, what is the zone, what is the date, what is things that we're looking at. So I really look forward to having those in-person ones because it's your opportunity to reach out to whether it's the department, it's the Wildlife Federation, to answer questions. Just ask. That's the big one. Is just ask rather than, hey, this is what I heard, and this is now what I'm going to spread around on, whether it's on social media. Is that we have the answers, and our job is to answer those questions. So,
yeah, in the Wildlife Federation, we have committees that will encompass any issue, natural resources concerning from water to pollinators to hunting, fishing, and trapping, right? So, look into the organization. We're always looking for new members, new input.
Absolutely. So, looking forward to it.
All right. I'd like to give a shout out again to Milford Hills, which is truly Wisconsin's premier shooting facility, and Chase Baker with Grit, the ones who help hold this show and produce it and make it is what it is. So thanks again, Chase, for everything that you do for conservation and the natural resources of this state. Thanks much.
Thanks,
we'll
everyone.
See you soon.